Hey everybody, Hostrone here with another Star Trek First Edition video. I believe this is going to be a part one of two series. This first part we're going to go over a deck that I've built. Something fun, not necessarily overly competitive. I'll probably talk at the end about how you can make changes to it to maybe make it a little bit more straightforward competitive if you wanted to. But I think for the purposes of this video, we're just going to mostly talk about uh, this somewhat fun deck. There's a little trick that I've discovered. It's not powerful. It's not game breaking. It is fun. And if you paid attention at all to the title card or the opening thumbnail for this video, you'll have at least an idea of where we're going with it. But we'll go ahead and kind of go through the deck in this video, maybe talk about it just for a few minutes, and then you'll want to probably come back for part two of the video. I'm hoping to play a game with this deck against one of the other Minnesota players, so you can kind of see the deck in action, see how it plays. Again, this is a deck that will not be something that you'll want to take to like to continentals or to worlds, but it is definitely a deck that you might have fun with at a local tournament, kitchen table game for sure, um, maybe even a regional if you're not really like overly concerned about being hyper competitive at a regional. This might be a fun little curveball that you can throw at an opponent um, if they have never, if they're not suspecting it. So we'll just go right into it then, and we'll just kind of go through this kind of as you would if you were in a game. So we'll start off with some doorways here. First off, we seed our Q's tent. We'll seed a temporal conduit, and then we are seeding temporal benefactor. And with the temporal benefactor, James Tiberius Kirk is our temporal benefactor, so he's granting his skills to other versions of Captain Kirk and Captain Pike. So that's kind of our doorway phase then. So we'd go into the mission phase. We'd reveal, this little group right here. This is what your opponent's going to see. They're going to see Police Trade Route, Battle of Narendra 3, Romulus, Sherman's Planet, Rurapente, and Examine Quasar. With this mission set up, your opponent's going to definitely have difficulty putting an exact beat on what you're doing, because there's definitely a lot of different angles off of this with the Evil Kirk, Temporal Benefactor, and the fact that we're running, some Fed missions here, and then a mission that gains access via non-line and Starfleet, and then of course Romulus. An opponent's going to be definitely kind of pressing to figure out what exactly that you're doing, because there's kind of a couple options here. Sherman's Planet says TOS in the past. Romulus says it could be Romulan headquarters or just seating drone control room. In which case, that doesn't tell you anything about the rest of the deck other than the fact that it's probably not TNG or DS9 culturally enforced. Battle of Narendra 3 is a mission that I've played with in my smoke decks. So, leaving open, this mission leaves open the possibility that we're playing, Enterprise E. And so, Enterprise E and past Klingons, because Narendra 3 has the corresponding time location that it goes with. And of course, Police Trade Route. Normally, you see this in a 22nd century deck with the Tellarite trading post at the Smuggler's Rendezvous. And so there is so many options here for what it is that could be the focal point of the deck. And even if you kind of assume the worst and so forth, you don't really know which mission they're going to start with. So, and of course we've got Rurapente here. Rurapente really only shows up if doing operate dilithium mine, but again, that doesn't necessarily tell you that the opponent's playing 22nd century Klingons or TOS Klingons or anything like that, or even TOS Feds, and they're just putting a Klingon prisoner here. Really doesn't belay anything. And of course, even if you shade towards thinking, well, it's probably like Klingons of some kind, then the question mark becomes, well, why this James Tiberius Kirk is a benefactor then? So that's the mission set, and then we just kind of move on. We do dilemmas, and we'll come back to the dilemmas later on. But we go past dilemmas. We're now into the everything else seed phase. We start off by just kind of letting our opponent know, finally ready to swim. We're in 22nd century, but we're past the dilemma phase at this point, so that information is not going to help the opponent. Dilemmas are seeded, so they've kind of committed to what they think you're going to do. We are doing Smuggler's Rendezvous, and that gets us the Tellarite Trading Post, and that gets us UFP1 Small Step, which we're just going to put on there for the second function. Seeds or plays on time location. Any ship may move between this time location and another time location in the same quadrant with a matching year by using 4 range. So 2154 time locations, we can get access anywhere on the space line just by using 4 range and going straight from it to the other one. We're committed to Smuggler's Rendezvous being our reporting location, so we'll put Protect the Timeline on it. This will simply allow us to have all of our 22nd century ships go between Smuggler's Rendezvous and Police Trade Route without, without being stopped, because we'll have 3 native people on there, because all 22nd century cards are native, so it's a super easy way to time travel. It's also a free reporting mechanism as well for us. We are going to see the Klingon Outpost, so now we've kind of given away what we're doing. And I think generally speaking, the Klingon Outpost will end up here at Battle of Narendra 3, but there's an argument for going at Police Trade Route. It kind of would depend on how the missions seed out. After that, we continue to acknowledge that we are in Klingons here. Operate Dilithium Gulag will go on Escape Gulag, which then rotates the mission so that we have a Klingon icon on our side now, as opposed to the opponent's side, so that will make it attemptable for us. So it seeds on a Repente Rotate mission. Once per game at the start of your turn, you may download 1 personnel with a Repente and Lord of Hand while you have a captive or any personal prisoner entitled here. You may draw 1 additional card at the end of turn. Once solved, each of your Klingon ships is range +2. So this is pretty much what we're going to do. This is going to be a card draw mechanism for us. It does open this mission up to be solved, but it's mainly the fact that we're going to get an additional card draw once we get it up and running. There will be no electronic frontier in this location. Moving on, we continue to confuse our opponent then, and we do see Drone Control Room at Romulus, which downloads us Admiral Veldor. Admiral Veldor special downloads during the seed phase, Garib, and Remote Interference. So this is another card draw mechanism for us. So this is our triplication of card draw mechanisms that we're going to utilize in the game. Playing a 22nd century personnel, using drone ships to move and just kind of buzz around the opponent for card draws, and sticking a prisoner at Operate Dilithium Gulag. The fact that we've seeded finally ready to swim in conjunction with this and Smuggler's Rendezvous, it should be pretty obvious that what we'll do is on the first turn is we'll go get Prisoner Archer, and we'll make him mine for cards for us. And now we get into the surprise of the deck. This is the part of the deck where our opponent's going to just wonder what on earth we're doing. But it'll be pretty clear to a smart opponent what's going on. So we will see Sherman's Peak, also at Agricultural Assessment. Yes, we have so many time locations that we're seeding. It's kind of fun. Seeds on table, you download Space Station K7, so Station K7 hits the table. Any players may download Organic Peace Treaty. We're not even going to bother with that. And then stuff related to Hero of the Empire and TOS cards with the AU icon, except near our native here. Moving on, this is where we start to show kind of what it is that we're doing. So we're going to see Hero of the Empire, seeds on Deep Space Station K7. We download Captain Kirk aboard. So Captain Kirk is now aboard. He is at a time location. He instantly becomes a temporal agent through Temporal Benefactor, and he's gaining James Tiberius Kirk's skills. We can special download Captain's Log during the seed phase if we want to. It's not really critical to the deck. If you want to put it in there, you can. I simply haven't yet, but I mean, we certainly could. We'll just say that we do that. We'll special download Captain's Log onto the table during the seed phase with our Captain Kirk, because while he may not be moved, he is not stopped, and even if he was stopped, his special download is still usable even as a stop personnel. So we do also basically get a free Captain's Log during the seed phase. And then we see 2 hidden agendas. Our opponent will not know what they are, but they will find out on the first turn. And this is what we're doing. So I conferred with Rules. I submitted this to Rules and got back the affirmative from them after they reviewed it that so what we do here is basically on the very first turn, we do our other stuff, and then during the orders phase, we'll simply flip a protection racket. And we'll just say that it goes on Captain, it's gonna go on Captain Kirk. And so protection racket reads, once each turn your Ferengi who has treachery or your non-Ferengi has treachery ×2, which this Kirk does because he gains the skills from James Tiberius Kirk, who has treachery ×2. So he has his own treachery ×2 now. You may threaten, place incident on any non-Borg personnel at this location. Well, he is a non-Borg personnel at this location, so he's going to threaten himself. Make any request of the opponent. Incident nullified if the opponent complies. Threatened personnel loses first listed skill, and opponent must probe each turn. So when he gains the skills, the only first listed skill he loses is the leadership ×2. Gain skills are functionally at the end of the list, or they're not even really. They just can't be the first listed skill because actual listed skills always come first. So he doesn't lose his 2 treachery from this. So this is what we do. So threatened personnel loses the first listed skill, and opponent must probe each turn. If they reveal a doorway or a skill dot, the assassin will strike, and the threatened personnel is killed. So what we do is we make a request of our opponent. And we'll say to our opponent, hi opponent, isn't this a fun little, neat little thing that I'm doing here? You know, it's kind of crazy. It's not super powerful. I'm just having fun. I've invested 4 seed cards to make this dumb little trick work. I've seeded a Temporal Benefactor, which is 1. I've seeded Sherman's Peak, which is 2. I've seeded the Hero of the Empire, which is 3. And I've seeded this Protection Racket, which is 4. So I've seeded 4 cards to this dumb little trick. So what I'd like from you is I would like to roll an 8-sided die, and whatever the die face comes up as, that's how many additional seed cards I get to seed from outside the game. And given the fact that I've already invested 4 seed cards into this, it's like a 50-50 chance that this actually, is no better than me just not doing this trick. So, if I come out with a 4 or less, I've either just seeded the 4 cards and not done this trick, or I've actually come out worse for this, and there's a 50% chance that I will come out better on this. But I'm going to tell you what, opponent, I'm going to do you a solid here. I'm going to help you make an informed decision here. I'm going to just show you the cards that I'm going to choose from, that I'm going to seed from outside the game, and you're going to see that there's nothing like really super important here. There's nothing that's going to be game breaking. This little trick that I'm doing is just to like have some fun. So you show your opponent that in your little side pile that you have over here, we simply have Hall of the Magistrates, Taking Charge, Valuable Prisoner, Reunite Legends, Temporal Micro Wormhole, a Battle Bridge Door, Defend Homeworld, Mission Debriefing, Let Me Help, and Process Ore Mining. You don't show them all the dilemmas over here, because we'll get to that later. But this is what you show to your opponent. Like, I'm going to just simply choose from these right here. There's nothing super powerful here. You know, these are all just cards that are just going to help me, like, do other things, right? And your opponent's going to say, well, you know what? If you have a cool opponent, if it's a friendly kitchen table game, if it's a regional tournament, and you're sitting against somebody, and you know everyone's there to have fun, and you're like, well, you know, this is random chance. I could roll a 1, and I will be essentially down 3 seed cards for no reason. And your opponent may simply comply, you know, and they'll just say, okay, you know what, that sounds fun. Let's do that because. And then you also say to your opponent, but you know, another reason, and if your opponent's still hemming and hawing, you can say to them, well, here's the thing. If you don't let me do this, what's going to happen is you're going to have to probe for the protection racket. And if you probe a skill dot or a doorway, you're going to kill Captain Kirk. And when you kill Captain Kirk, that's going to trigger Hero of the Empire. And this is the additional thing that I check with rules, and I had it confirmed by rules, that since it's the opponent's action of probing that is triggering the protection racket, which then kills the person, which then triggers the Hero of the Empire, it was ultimately the opponent's action which triggered the Hero of the Empire. So so you say to your opponent, this is a pretty reasonable request. We're throwing a little gambling in here. And so, you know, I could roll a 2, I could roll a 3, and this is really kind of a wash. But on the flip side of it, if you don't let me do this, you're going to probably kill Captain Kirk, and all of my missions are plus 10 points, and all of your Alpha Quadrant missions are going to be minus 10 points. And so you kind of motivate your opponent a little bit with that knowledge, and they're probably going to give it to you. So let's go ahead and do that. And you don't even have to do it this way because this is a request. You can just flat out say to your opponent, like, I would like 5 seed cards, or I would like 6 additional seed cards. You can take the random roll out of it if you want to. This is all about the kind of like table talk diplomacy of the game. You know, if you're playing against somebody who you know is a chill opponent, an easygoing opponent who likes fun, you can just kind of say to them, hey, I'm just having fun here. And they might comply with it without even having to do the roll. You can just say, hey, I'd like to put like 5 or 6 seed cards in here, you know. And I'm even showing you what they are. And as you can see, none of these will be game breaking, you know. And so your opponent might comply. But if you have a more stubborn opponent, you may have to say, like, you know what, I'll give you a little bit here, but we can do a random roll. I'll roll an 8-sided die, and we'll see how it turns out. But on the flip side of it, if you don't do it, I'm gonna go to 2-mission win, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you're gonna probably have to 3-mission win or more, because if I have point drain stuff on top of all of this, you know, you're gonna be in a tough place. So with all of this in mind, you're kind of coercing your opponent into letting you do this. There's a really good chance that most opponents are going to let you do this for one reason or another. But, you know, let's say that we have the fun opponent. And they just say, you know, they just kind of agree to your, I'll just seed six cards out of here. So your opponent complies with it. So then the protection racket would go away. And we would just simply put Hall of the Magistrates into play here at Battle of Narendra 3, and we'd put a Taking Charge into play, and we'd put Valuable Prisoner into play as a hidden agenda. We'd put Reunite Legends on the Klingon Outpost. We'd put Temporal Micro Wormhole into play, and we'd put a Battle Bridge into play. And with the Battle Bridge comes our 14 Tactics. So the 14 Tactics then is the Pulse Disruptors, okay? Because again, in the rules, you can have all these side decks, they're just not open unless the seeded card opens them. So you have this Battle Bridge as a side deck, you just don't have a way of accessing it if you don't put Battle Bridge Door into play. Now here's the thing, Battle Bridge Door doesn't say it seeds, it just says place on during the seed phase, but Protection Racket's breaking the rules of the game anyway. And it's basically been ruled that, you know, you can basically break cards and what they do as long as the agreed to protection racket allows it. So, you know, we're ignoring that problem because of simply how protection racket has been decidedly utilized. So So we put a battle bridge and we just get some 14 disruptors. This is not really that big of a deal. The battle bridge might even be the card that you don't even really care about too much. And if you wanted to, you could always just bypass it for defend homeworld, which might be a good thing actually, because the defend homeworld might be more important for getting. And there's a person on the deck that'd be a good reason for having defend homeworld over the battle bridge. But let's just go ahead and do that because the battle bridge is not that big of a deal. So we'll just do defend homeworld instead of the battle bridge. So you've done that on the first turn. The other thing that we've done is that on the very first turn we put prisoner archer into play, and then that drew us a card with finally ready to swim. And at the end of the turn we draw 2, and the opponent has basically just kind of given you, if your opponent agrees to 6, you've now functionally created 32 seed cards for your deck, because you've gotten essentially the 4 back that you used to do this trick, and you've gotten 2 more, so you're at 32 seed cards. Well, your opponent has his turn, and then it comes back to you, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to play some dudes out, and then, you know what? Let's actually go ahead and just protection racket again. So we protection racket again, and the same thing. We just say, hey, opponent, you know what I'd like to do? So because you actually did give me like 6 seed cards, and that's really all I wanted, this is what I'm going to do. You're going to let me seed 6 dilemmas now. Or if you have a much more like fun, amenable opponent, maybe or more difficult opponent, you simply say, let's roll that 8-sided die again, and that's how many dilemmas that I get to seed from outside the game. And now your opponent's kind of in a bind, because if they give you a bunch of extra dilemmas, that's just going to make everything harder for them to do. But if they don't do it, then your opponent's going to probably just kill Captain Kirk on their turn, because a skill dot is going to be easily probably 75% of their deck or better. In which case, it would probably just be, if it's not their turn 2, it's going to be their turn 3 that it's going to go off, and you're not solving missions by turn 3. So your missions are going to have plus 10 points. There is going to be a minus 10 points. So your opponent's now in a really tough jam. And the fact is that with this second protection racket, your opponent's basically in a no-win scenario now. That if they give you if they give you a bunch of dilemmas, it's gonna just be so hard, because they're gonna be facing 3 and 4 card combos across the board. And if they don't give it to you, then you're on a very easy 2-mission win plan, and they're now on a very difficult 3-mission win plan. So who knows what your opponent's going to do, but let's just assume for a moment that your opponent thinks that, well, I've got a good solving deck and I'm a good player. I'm going to try to bust these dilemmas. So they give you, let's just say they give you 6 dilemmas. Now we've got all these dilemmas to play with. So this is what you brought in your little side pile. And so now if you're playing against TNG Borg, we'll look at that. If you're playing TNG Borg, look at that. You've got the Dial-Up God combo that you can stick at a planet. If you've also got Buried Alive Cytherians, so that for like an early game you can stick that underneath their planet mission that they were probably planning on doing first. Because we're seeding a 2-carder over here, you've got a bunch of good options here for just putting in front of that. And our little 2-card combo over here is a Temptations and Female's Love Interest. So you can, maybe stick the dead end in front of it, because we don't have a dead end anywhere else. So we can dead end that mission, make it the last mission that they do. Otherwise, you've got access to like Kazon Bomb, which can nuke a bunch of people, make this harder. You also, if it happens to be at a space mission, then we've got Arsenal Divided, and we've got Ankari Spirits. Ankari Spirits is a really good one, because if they do Ankari Spirits, if they don't have the Ankari Spirits, then you're going to kill some dudes, they're going to bounce off of this, probably not going to be able to move it, and then you're going to be able to Ankari Spirits again. So that's pretty devastating. If you're playing against TNG Borg, you can one-off a one off an emergent life form somewhere, or you can put a weak will perish if you want to keep it as a dual mission. Weak will perish is definitely gonna wreck a TNG Borg or a first contact Borg deck pretty hard. Got Disgraceful Assault, because as an option here, if you did put the Battle Bridge into play, Disgraceful Assault's pretty good. If you think your opponent's playing a type of deck where they may not have this, we got Executive Authorization. Executive Authorization is such a hit or miss dilemma that it's really hard to justify putting it in your seed deck unless a meta really shifts in a particular way. But we have it in our little group here just as a purely like, if you think that opponent's going to have a hard time. I mean, Executive Authorization is really good against Hirogen. It's really good against Vidian. Let's see what else. A purely non-aligned deck might struggle with it a little bit. Of course, Borg only have a queen, so TNG Borg struggles with it. It's a dilemma that they have to adapt to, because a queen, well, I suppose they have a counterpart. They can do it with the counterpart. But if you put this behind a choice kill, then that might be something that's hard to do. But so there's a lot of options here. Lack of preparation is a really good one that you can sneak a lack of preparation underneath a mission, and then if they're like, because they're facing 4-card combos, they're like, well, I don't want to commit a lot of people because they're probably going to die. I'm just going to send down a couple of randos. You can hit them with another 10-point loss with the lack of preparation. Misinterpreted History is just a solid dilemma against everybody. It also sets up Executive Authorization perfectly against Borg. If you put it in space, you just put it on the planet. If they send the counterpart down, then you can kill the counterpart with Misinterpreted History, because you have probably most treasuring and probably highest cunning. So that's a fun little combo versus TNG Borg right there. So you could always just put, if you're playing against TNG Borg, you put this at one planet, you put this at another planet, and their planets are now really difficult. You force them to use an adapt here, and you force them, and you just probably end their game here. So those are the options there. That's kind of the trick of the deck. This is, like I said, this is kind of like having fun. We can talk. Let's talk about the dilemmas now, as far as the deck itself. So at space, we're running a space amoeba into a scout encounter. With the scout encounter, we've got the Raptor. The Raptor here. The Raptor is a scout vessel. We download a couple of dudes. We get a couple of Pamokes. And then we Klingon bounty, so we kind of take their best dude. Hopefully. It is a random selection, but we hopefully take their best dude. And then, if we put the Battle Bridge in play, we would battle them, because both ships would just be attributes 5, and the Battle Bridge with the copies of Pulse Disruptor would get us over them fairly easily. Probably only really like an evasive maneuvers or something is going to probably stop you from damaging them, in which case we've taken a guy and killed 2 guys and stopped them. And then behind that's the Cytherians. The other one, we've got Arsenal divided into V'ger, into Temptations. We seeded, basically during the seed phase, we ended up putting into play the Hero of the Empire and the Remote Interference. And I believe there's one other somewhere, or maybe not. Oh, so yeah, the Operate Dilithium Gulags. We put 3 into play. The opponent possibly has 1, maybe 2, but regardless, because we put the Taking Charge into play, we're going to put Search and Seize. We're going to put Search and Seize out. We're going to stick that on to Battle of Narendra 3, and we can do that where we can use our non-aligned personnel to be on the planet. We can put our Klingons on the ship. We can try to overcome dilemmas and get a couple of captured people. Because with putting Hall of Magistrates into play, we can get Klingon Imperial Court through one of our Klingons. You put that into play, and if we somehow get to 3 captives on Escape Gulag, we'd have possibly 1 here. We'd possibly have 2 from this, or maybe get all 3 from this. Then we could score it for 15 points. Of course, this is more of a if our opponent still. This is if our opponent gives us additional dilemmas and our missions are not boosted. This is still how you try to go after a 2-mission win. You do Klingon Imperial Court and you do Search and Seizure, because once you get through this mission, if you're somehow able to get 3, if you get 3 captives on there, then Battle of Under 3 is 40 points. You get 15 from Imperial Court, and then you just never have those captives be at risk, obviously. And you then have Escape Gulag be worth an additional 10 points. So then it's 30, 70. Oh, I suppose that's 5 points short. I know I put 5 points elsewhere in the deck. I think I have Arbiter of Succession in the deck somewhere for those additional points. But, you know, realistically, I think a lot of opponents are just going to say, you know what, I'm going to take the risk. You can have your 10 points. I'll go minus 10 points, because giving you additional dilemmas can be devastating. So, but in either case, you know, if you have to go to a 3-mission win, you go to a 3-mission win. One of the beauties of this deck is that 4 missions are readily accessible no matter where you are at on in the space line. You can spread the opponent out as much as you can, other than the fact that we want to protect Escape Gulag with Police Trade Route. I'm going to try to put Escape Gulag near one of these 2 missions on the end of a space line, kind of away from your opponent, because Prisoner Archer, you don't want to get him killed because he's card draws, and you don't want to get your captives released or killed at Escape Gulag. But yeah, we have Temptations of the Flesh here. We got Temptations of the Flesh there because we have all these objectives in play. We are again running the Double Dumbass on You card. I mean, it's just so strong. And I guess now, as of me recording this video, Johan's won British Nationals with a Double Dumbass, not giving up a single mission. Obviously, some of that was the fact that he played really well, and you know, he knows his deck, and he's a really good player, like a really good player, and was able to go really fast. But it also sounds like the Double Dumbass has kept opponents off space missions really well. So we're going to continue running Double Dumbass wherever possible, because it's such a strong thing to do with Temptations of the Flesh. So, and then it also sets up really nicely with Romulan Mind Probes over here. This is a dual combo. You put Romulan Mind Probes, Double Dumbass. They hit the friendly fire, and most likely don't get through it. We also, with some of the cards that we've seeded out here, let's see here, the Arsenal Divided, you know, something you can use, but we also have the Arsenal Divided here as well that works really well with it. And then what we're also running here is we've got, for our 1 planet combo, we have a God combo set up. So even if you don't want to necessarily do God dial up at 1 planet, we can literally just put the dial up here again, and this is harsh against TNG Borg, as I've shown you guys before. Over here at this little combo, we've got M113 into White Rabbit into a minion. The idea here is M113 will kill either the physics or the archaeology that they probably only have 1 of. Then those people will stop. This will go on the mission, and then they would have to then reattempt that turn or the next turn and be able to beat a minion. If they cannot reattempt that turn, at the end of the turn, we'll just go ahead and kill, be it the engineer or the security that we need to kill, and then your opponent only has the 1 turn to try to solve it before the White Rabbit goes off and reduces it by 10. So this is a great combo to put at a mission that you think your opponent might do like early on in the game, because, and it's probably preferably planet. I think in a lot of ways we can just kind of treat this as our second planet combo, because this is better at planet. And then that way it frees this combo up to be, you know, kind of maybe like an away from an opponent. Because if you're not playing a CNG board, God isn't as powerful against a lot of opponents. Whereas this combo, then, you know, even if the opponent doesn't give you doesn't allow the Hero of the Empire to go off, we can still maybe put them on a 3-mission win here with White Rabbit. And then, like I said, our last combo here is the Female's Love Interest into Temptations of the Flesh, which we're then, again, trying to boost its efficacy with the double dumbasses. This deck does draw fairly decently. So we've got essentially 1 card draw with Finally Ready to Swim. We have 1 to 2 cards with Remote Interference. We've got a 3rd card draw with Operate Dilithium Gulag. You have your normal end of turn draw. So basically on turn 2, you're drawing 4, but then we also have in the deck, we've got copies of Kiva's Fossil Collector, and we also have copies of Temporal Almanac. If your opponent doesn't kill Captain Kirk, you readily have your temporal agent at a time location. So the Temporal Almanac then becomes live for whatever you want to use it for. If you want to use it for draws, or if you want to use it for free event play. Now the free event that you would possibly play is that we're running, I think, 3 or 4 copies of Goddess of Empathy in the deck. As long as Double Dumbass is going to be a thing in the meta, Goddess of Empathy can kind of shut that down, because if you play it on your turn, they go to their, you know, you play it on your turn, and then they cannot play Double Dumbasses on you during your turn. So you're free to attempt the mission. So the problem is that it's a bit of a nombo, in the sense of then when your opponent goes to his turn, well, you can't play your Double Dumbasses. But realistically, that's probably okay, because you don't need the Double Dumbasses to go off for our dilemmas to work, because we're also kind of, in a sense, trying to 2-mission win. We're trying to go faster than our opponent with a 2-mission win, and they're probably on a 3-mission win, or even if they don't give it to you, you know, we can possibly send them to a 3-mission win with the White Rabbit, as I said earlier. So, but the bigger issue is that we put Goddess of Empathy in the deck just to kind of deal with the way the meta is right now. So you can free play that with Temporal Almanac as well. So you can actually just go card play a dude, free play a dude, free play a dude, and then go, okay, Temporal Almanac, play the Goddess of Empathy for free onto the table and attempt a mission and push through anything that your opponent might do. The other thing that Goddess of Empathy does is it makes your dilemmas stronger, even against a double dumbass on your turn. Even if you don't get double dumbass, well, you make your dilemma combo stronger by having Goddess of Empathy shut down opponents trying to bug out. So Goddess of Empathy, I think, is a card that people definitely need to like re-examine playing a bit more judiciously again. Yeah, we have 3 copies of it in the deck here. And when I fishbowled this deck earlier, just kind of did a draws fishbowl, yeah, it really wasn't that hard to find the Goddess of Empathy. So at the very least, when you go to attempt a space mission, then like you're free from getting double dumbassed and stuff. So some other fun little tricks in the deck. If we did get the Defend Homeworld, we would discard it. We would grab General Kava. General Kava draws you a card when you report an augment. We have lots of augments in the deck. You know, we've got Volok, and we've got Malik, and we've got Jaya, and we've got Persis, and we have Raken, and then we have the Klingon augments of Marab, and so forth. So that's where you just kind of want to decide that if your opponent gives you, like, say, 6, you know, seed cards, you may want to get the Defend Homeworld, or you may want to get the Defend Homeworld instead of the Temporal Micro Wormhole. The reason why we have the Temporal Micro Wormhole is that with Temporal Benefactor, we can go get a Temporal Agent. So we go get Daniels, or we go get Ensign Jameson. Ensign Jameson has to go through the Temporal Micro Wormhole to be played. Daniels does not. He's not a lion. He can just play to our outpost. That's fine. Jameson, though, has to come in through the temporal micro wormhole. In a situation where our opponent gave us, like, say, 5 or 6, and we got the temporal micro wormhole, but then on the second one they said no, killed Kirk, we're on a 2-mission win plan. Our preferred 2 missions are police trade route, battle of under 3, because these each would then have a time location in play for us. We can use Ensign Jameson and we can use Daniels as a way to bug out of the mission. So while facing a dilemma that you just know you can't beat or is going to destroy you or something, you special download out of time, and then you use the time travel function of it to pull your people out of the mission attempt and send them back to the time location. So there you go. That's a fun little trick. It also is a trick that you can use even with Goddess of Empathy on the table because there's no interrupts being used here. So it is still a viable bug out option even against the Goddess of Empathy. As my Coach Kevin Ackle, Coach Kevin subscribers know that one of the Coach Kevin precepts is that always be ready to beat the thing that you're shutting down, anticipating that your opponent is going to try to shut it down because it's a thing. So bugging out with interrupts like the Gift and Smoke Bomb and Incoming Message Federation and stuff like that, they get shut down by Goddess of Empathy, but then we next level it with Out of Time combo, or Out of Time bug out combo. So we've got Harad Sar and Shobihar to get us slave girls. We get Dinesh, get Navar. Dinesh is over here. We also have Vina, so you can just hold it and get Vina if we're like desperate for a skill. An important aspect of this deck is we have to be able to solve Battle of Under 3 with a AU ship with weapons greater than 7. Well, the truth is that the 22nd century ships don't really have that for weapons. This one gets attributes all +1 for each command star Klingon 22nd, so we can get it over that way. Let's see here. The Nuke Yob can get over by putting augments on it. But the reason why we would go get Reunite Legends in addition to being objective is we can get Kronos 1, and then Kronos 1 can get us Captain Kang, and Captain Kang can make any weapons, any Klingon, or any ship at a Klingon mission weapons +2. This is obviously a Klingon mission. And so he can basically just him plus whoever you need to get even a +1 will allow you to get to the weapons that you need in order to solve this mission. So, but it also just is a way that you can get a free ship and a free personnel. So the kind of the bottom line of this deck is that, yes, we're investing like 4 to 5 seed cards to make this trick work, but we're going to get more than 5 seed cards worth of value. Because the idea is that with our first use of Protection Racket, you have to just kind of point out to your opponent that it's like, I've already invested all this to try to maybe break even. Maybe I'll get a little benefit, but it's not that big a benefit, and I'm not putting game-breaking cards into the game. So your opponent's probably just going to let you have that, especially against the reality that when you point out to them that if they don't, you're going to 2-mission win, and they have to 3-mission win. And that's going to be possibly enough for your opponent just to let you have these things. And so, like, most of the time you're going to break even. And then it's the second Protection Racket where we double down on it and we put our opponent into like a horrible bind, in which case if they give us like 4, 5, 6 more dilemmas to put in, well, now we're up to like, maybe 38 seed cards that we've functionally gotten away with, which is pretty powerful. So that's the deck. Come back in a couple of days. Hopefully for the recording of me playing a game against one of the Minnesota players. Hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think of this deck. By the time you watch it, if I get that game played, it will already have been played, so don't worry about, spoiling it for an opponent because the game will have already occurred. So just feel free to give thoughts and comments if there's ways that you think the deck could be played differently or whatever. I think one of the beauties of this dumb little trick is that you can put it into basically any deck that is not property enforced. I've chosen to play it with 22nd Century Klingons, kind of for the lulls, but also because of the fact that right now I think 22nd Century is in a good spot in the meta with its ability to bop around missions and so forth. So, and the out of time trick as well. But yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. Feel free to send me a private message if you have some thoughts on how to maybe make it better. Coach Kevin is always available if you want to play the deck sometime. If you want a coaching session on how to play it for like a local tournament or something like that, just send me a private message. Make sure you like and subscribe. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell for notifications when we drop the second part of the video. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. Live long and prosper.